They thought they could erase the one person who built the thing that made them rich. They thought signing my name off the pitch deck would bury me for good. What they didn't know, I own every line of that code, every clause in that contract, and every shred of leverage they need to survive. Buckle up, this is how you turn corporate betrayal into a 40-mile lesson they'll never forget. My name is Jessica Monroe, and 5 years ago, I was the kind of person who believed loyalty meant something in Silicon Valley. At 35, I'd already spent a decade grinding through the tech industry's meat grinder, watching mediocre men fail upward while brilliant women got relegated to culture-fit conversations. But I was different, or so I told myself. I had the code. I had the vision. I had 2 co-founders who swore we were building something revolutionary together. LangMind Analytics started in a garage in Austin, Texas, because of course it did. Every tech story needs its garage mythology, right? Except ours was actually just a converted pool house behind my rental, and the only reason we worked there was because my landlord let me run industrial-grade servers off his electrical panel for an extra $200 a month. But the cliché origin didn't matter. What mattered was the algorithm I'd been perfecting since my MIT days, a natural language processing system that could learn context and nuance faster than anything on the market. My co-founders, Marcus Webb and Priya Patel, brought their own strengths. Marcus had the business connections from his stint at Dell, and Priya could sell ice to Eskimos. I brought the tech. More specifically, I brought the proprietary framework that would eventually process $40 million worth of enterprise contracts. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The early days were exactly what you'd expect. 18-hour coding marathons fueled by energy drinks and leftover Thai food. Pitch meetings where VCs asked Priya to explain my technical presentations, because apparently my explanations were too complex. Marcus schmoozing at South by Southwest, while I debugged critical errors at 3 a.m. We were a team, though, or I thought we were. Our breakthrough came when I cracked the contextual learning problem. Most NLP systems at the time could parse language, sure, but they couldn't truly understand implied meaning or cultural context. My algorithm could. It could read a contract and flag not just the explicit terms but the implied risks. It could analyze customer service transcripts and identify not just complaints, but underlying satisfaction patterns. It was beautiful, elegant, and entirely my creation. The Series A funding came fast after our first enterprise client saw a 30% improvement in contract negotiation outcomes. $7 million from Apex Ventures, led by a sharp-dressed shark named Harrison Chen, who promised he was founder-friendly. The term sheet negotiations were brutal. Priya and Marcus wanted to give up more equity for a higher valuation. I fought tooth and nail for one specific clause: retention of intellectual property rights for all code I'd personally developed before the funding round. "Jessica, you're being paranoid," Marcus had said, sprawled in one of those ridiculous beanbag chairs we'd bought to seem more startup-y for investor visits. "We're all in this together." "Then it shouldn't matter if I keep the rights," I'd countered, not looking up from the legal documents spread across my desk. "The company gets unlimited license to use it. I just maintain ownership of my pre-funding work." Harrison's lawyers pushed back hard, but I wouldn't budge. I threatened to walk and take my code with me. After a 2-day standoff that had Priya stress-eating her way through 3 family-size bags of chips, they caved. The clause stayed in. Harrison even smiled when we signed, like he respected my stubbornness. I should have known then that respect and destruction often wear the same mask in Silicon Valley. The company exploded after that. We moved out of the pool house and into a real office in downtown Austin. All exposed brick and standing desks. We hired aggressively engineers, salespeople, marketing wizards who made our ugly enterprise software look sexy. I built out my team carefully, bringing in talented developers who could extend my framework without breaking its elegant core. By year 3, we were processing millions of documents daily for Fortune 500 companies. My algorithm had evolved into a full platform, but the core architecture remained mine. I'd been careful about that, making sure the foundational patents were filed in my name with exclusive license to LangMind. Standard founder protection, our lawyer had assured me. Marcus and Priya hadn't questioned it. Why would they? We were making money hand over fist. The Series B round brought in $45 million and our first real board of directors. That's also when Harrison Chen introduced us to Nina Voss. Nina came with credentials that made my MIT degree look like a participation trophy: Harvard MBA, stint at McKinsey, then a decade turning around struggling tech companies for various private equity firms. She joined as our strategic advisor, which should have been my first red flag. Nobody needs a strategic advisor when they're growing at 300% year over year. Jessica, so wonderful to finally meet the genius behind the algorithm, Nina had said at our first meeting, her handshake firm enough to crack walnuts. She wore the kind of understated designer clothes that whispered rather than shouted their price tags. Harrison speaks so highly of your technical capabilities. Technical capabilities, not vision, not leadership, just capabilities. Like I was a particularly useful tool in the company toolbox. Nina integrated herself into our operations with surgical precision. She attended board meetings as Harrison's +1. She had coffee with our major clients. She spent hours with Marcus discussing organizational optimization, and with Priya on brand evolution. With me, she scheduled brief 15-minute check-ins about technical roadmaps, always cutting them short with an apologetic smile and a reminder that she didn't want to waste my valuable coding time. I was too busy building to see the ground shifting beneath my feet. My team had grown to 40 engineers, and we were pushing the boundaries of what NLP could do. We'd started working on predictive analysis, not just understanding what documents said, but anticipating what they might lead to. Legal departments were salivating over the possibilities. I was in my element, lost in the elegant complexity of making machines understand human ambiguity. The betrayal came on a Monday morning that started like any other. I'd been up until 4 finishing a new module that could identify emotional manipulation in negotiation transcripts. My coffee was still hot when the email landed in my inbox. Urgent board meeting required. Conference room A, 9:00 a.m. It was 8:47. I closed my laptop, grabbed my coffee, and walked to the conference room without any particular concern. We'd had urgent board meetings before, usually when a big client was on the line or when Harrison wanted to show off for potential investors. The room was full when I arrived, the entire board, including 2 members I'd only seen on video calls. Marcus and Priya sat on the far side of the table, neither quite meeting my eyes, and at the head of the table, in what had always been my seat, sat Nina Voss. "Jessica, please sit," Nina said, gesturing to a chair along the side of the table. Not at the head, not even at the corner, the side, like a middle manager being called in for a performance review. I sat, my coffee suddenly tasting like burnt offerings. "I'll cut straight to the point," Nina continued, sliding a document across the table. "The board has decided to restructure the company's leadership to better position us for our Series C round and eventual IPO. As of today, I'll be taking over as CEO." The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my face neutral. I'd learned that from debugging, never let the code see you sweat. "I see. And Marcus and Priya will continue in their current roles, reporting to me." Nina's smile was practiced, professional, poisonous. "As for you, we're bringing in Owen Blair from Google's AI division to serve as CTO. You'll be transitioning to a technical advisor role." Technical advisor. The same title they'd given our first intern's cousin who'd contributed 3 lines of comments to our codebase. I picked up the document, a separation agreement, carefully drafted to look like a promotion on paper. "Technical advisor to the CEO," it said. 6 months of advisory fees at my current salary, then a clean break, and buried on page 3, the knife twist, a non-compete clause that would bar me from working in NLP, machine learning, or any related field for 2 years. "This is generous. Jessica," Harrison Chen spoke up from his seat at Nina's right hand. "We're not pushing you out. We're acknowledging that your skills are best utilized in pure technical work, not company leadership." "My skills built this company," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "My algorithm is the product." "The company's algorithm," Nina corrected gently, "and Owen has extensive experience scaling AI platforms at enterprise level. Something we need as we move toward that billion-dollar valuation." I looked at Marcus and Priya. Marcus was studying his phone like it contained the secrets of the universe. Priya at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, her fingers shredding a paper napkin under the table. "I need time to review this with my lawyer," I said. Nina's smile sharpened. "Of course, You have until end of business today. I'm sure you'll find the terms more than fair. But Jessica, she leaned forward slightly, if you choose to make this difficult, we have a board-approved alternative that's significantly less generous. I'd hate to see a founder leave with nothing but a tarnished reputation. The threat hung in the air like smog. Sign quietly or be destroyed publicly. The fact that she felt comfortable making it told me everything I needed to know about how thoroughly I'd been outmaneuvered. I stood, taking the document with me. I'll let you know by 5. The walk back to my office felt like a funeral march. Developers looked up as I passed, some waving, others calling out questions about the new module. They had no idea their technical leader had just been gutted and hung out to dry. My office, the corner one with the good light that I'd claimed when we moved in, already had a box sitting on my desk. Subtle. I closed the door, pulled out my personal laptop, and started making calls. The first was to my lawyer, Amelia Price. We'd known each other since undergrad, when she was pre-law, and I was convincing myself that computer science was just a stepping stone to changing the world. "They can't do this," was her first response after I'd forwarded her the agreement. "You have founder protections. You own shares." "They're not taking my shares," I said, staring out at the Austin skyline. "They're just making me irrelevant. Look at the org chart on page 7. Technical advisor reports to no one, has no direct reports, no decision-making authority. It's a 6-month fade-out to avoid the optics of firing a female founder." Amelia was quiet for a moment. I could hear her typing. "Send me your original employment agreement and all your IP assignments. And Jess, don't sign anything today. That end-of-business deadline is bullshit. They can't force you out that fast without cause. They'll claim performance issues, say I can't scale with the company." I laughed, bitter and short. Harrison's been setting it up for months. All those board meetings where Nina questioned my strategic vision. All those times Marcus backed her up about needing experienced leadership. Just send me everything and start documenting. Every email, every code commit, every decision you've made. We're going to need ammunition. I spent the next 3 hours doing exactly that. But the real revelation came when I pulled up our original incorporation documents. There it was, buried in subsection 3.2.4, the clause I'd fought so hard to keep. All proprietary algorithms, frameworks, and code architectures developed by Jessica Monroe prior to Series A funding remain her sole intellectual property, with LangMind Analytics holding an exclusive, non-transferable license for use in perpetuity, contingent upon Jessica Monroe's continued employment or board-approved departure terms. Contingent upon continued employment or board-approved departure terms. I read it again. Then a third time. Then I called Amelia back. "They fucked up," she said after I'd read her the clause. "If they force you out without your approval, the license becomes non-exclusive. You can take your core architecture anywhere. They'll claim everything's been so modified that my original code doesn't matter anymore. Let them try. You've been committing to a personal repository this whole time, right? Like I told you to." I smiled for the first time all day. Every single commit, time-stamped and verified. "Then here's what we're going to do. You're going to play along. Take the advisor role. Let them think they've won. And we're going to document every single way they use your architecture. Every demo, every client presentation, every line of code that touches your original work." "When do they close Series C?" Nina mentioned 3 months. They've got a lead investor already, some private equity firm from Toronto. "Perfect. That's our timeline. 3 months to build an airtight case. Can you stomach playing nice that long?" I thought about it. 3 months of watching Owen Blair sit in my office, use my title, take credit for my work. 3 months of Nina's condescending smiles and Harrison's false sympathy. 3 months of Marcus and Priya pretending I didn't exist. "I can do 3 months," I said, "but I want more than just my code back. I want them to bleed." Amelia's laugh was sharp and appreciative. "Now you're thinking like a lawyer. Send them an email by 5 saying you need the standard 72 hours to review with counsel. They'll give it to you because the alternative is you making a scene. Then we get to work." The email was sent at 4:47 p.m. Nina responded within minutes, CCing the entire board. "Of course. Jessica, we want this transition to be as smooth as possible for everyone. Please let us know by Thursday at 5 p.m. Thursday gave me 2 more days to prepare. I spent them documenting everything, every algorithm, every optimization, every piece of the platform that traced back to my original work. My personal repository grew fat with evidence. I also did something else. I started recording. Texas is a one-party consent state for recordings. As long as one person in a conversation knows it's being recorded, and that person can be you, it's perfectly legal. I invested in a high-quality digital recorder and started capturing every interaction. Wednesday's transition meeting with Owen Blair was particularly illuminating. So this is the core architecture, I explained, walking him through the codebase on my soon-to-be his monitor. Owen was everything Silicon Valley loved in a CTO: tall, white, male, with just enough gray at his temples to suggest wisdom without looking old. His resume was impressive on paper: 5 years at Google, 2 at Facebook, a stint at a successful AR startup, but as I watched him squint at my code, I realized he was a manager, not a builder. "This seems unnecessarily complex," he said, pointing at a particularly elegant recursive function. "Couldn't we simplify this with a standard library solution?" I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. That function was the heart of our contextual understanding. Replacing it with a standard library would be like replacing a heart with a bicycle pump. We could, but we'd lose about 60% of our accuracy. He made a note in his moleskin notebook. Of course he used a moleskin. "We'll revisit that. I'm all about optimization and scalability." "This processes 50 million documents a day," I said quietly. "It scales fine." He gave me the kind of smile you give a child who's just shown you their finger painting. "I'm sure it does. But Google Scale is different. You'll see." I recorded every word. Thursday afternoon. I signed the separation agreement with 2 modifications Amelia had insisted on. First, the non-compete was limited to direct competitors, not the entire field of NLP. Second, I retained access to the codebase for the duration of my advisory period to ensure smooth knowledge transfer. Nina agreed readily to both. Why wouldn't she? She thought she'd won. My last day as CTO was anticlimactic. No goodbye party, no commemorative plaque, just a security guard watching as I packed my personal items into the box they'd thoughtfully provided. My team looked shell-shocked when the announcement went out that afternoon. A few of the braver ones stopped by to express their confusion and disappointment. "This is bullshit," said Raj, one of my senior engineers. "You built this place." "Owen has impressive credentials," I replied, loud enough for the security guard to hear. "I'm sure he'll do great things with the platform." Raj's expression said everything his words couldn't, but I just smiled and continued packing. Let them think I was beaten. Let them think I was going quietly into that good night of tech irrelevance. The advisory period began the following Monday. I was given a small office on the 2nd floor, wedged between the supply closet and the men's bathroom. No window, no nameplate. Just a desk and a chair that had seen better decades. The symbolism wasn't subtle. My new routine was simple. Arrive at 9, attend whatever knowledge transfer meetings Owen scheduled, document everything, leave at 5. I was a ghost haunting my own creation, and I played the part perfectly. Owen's meetings were exercises in masculine confidence covering technical ignorance. He'd already decided that my architecture needed a complete overhaul to meet industry standards. When I asked which standards, specifically, he referenced general Google practices that had nothing to do with NLP. "The recursive learning functions need to go," he announced in week 2. "They're too resource-intensive. They're the core of our contextual understanding," I explained patiently, as if I hadn't had this exact conversation already. "Without them, we're just another keyword matcher." "That's thinking too small," he said, whiteboarding what looked like a first-year computer science diagram. "We need to think about scale, about IPO readiness, about what investors want to see." I dutifully took notes, recorded every word, and forwarded it all to Amelia. The real intelligence came from my former team. They were confused, demoralized, and increasingly angry as Owen's optimizations broke functionality they'd spent years perfecting. A few started meeting me for coffee, off the record, to vent their frustrations. He asked us to remove the bias detection module. Lila, one of my machine learning specialists, told me over lattes at a shop 2 blocks from the office, said it was slowing down processing time. "That module prevents the system from learning discriminatory patterns," I said carefully. "It's crucial for enterprise deployment." That's what I told him. He said we could add it back in version 2. She laughed bitterly. There won't be a version 2 if we ship without it. Carrington Industries already threatened to pull their contract over bias concerns. I made sympathetic noises while mentally adding another bullet point to my growing list of Owen's disasters. Amelia was building a beautiful case file for my documentation. Every broken feature, every lost optimization, every client complaint that traced back to Owen's changes. But the real gift came in week 4. I was staying late, ostensibly to finish some documentation Owen had requested about our patent applications. In reality, I was waiting for the office to empty so I could do some deeper digging. At around 8 p.m., I heard voices from the conference room down the hall. Nina and Harrison, their words carrying clearly through the thin walls. The Series C is contingent on showing 30% growth this quarter, Harrison was saying. Can we deliver? Not with the current architecture, Nina replied. Owens identified multiple inefficiencies, but once we've rebuilt on standard frameworks, we'll be able to onboard clients much faster. And Monroe? Irrelevant. Her advisory period ends in 2 months. Owen will have extracted everything useful by then. The non-compete keeps her out of our hair for 2 years. By the time she can work again, we'll be too big for her to matter. The team seems loyal to her, Nina laughed. Engineers are loyal to their paychecks. A few strategic raises, some equity refreshers. They'll forget all about their former CTO. Besides, Owen's bringing in his own people from Google. Fresh blood is exactly what we need. I sat in my dim office, recorder running, capturing every damning word. They were planning to gut my team along with my architecture. The company I'd built was being systematically destroyed by people who thought leadership meant PowerPoints and buzzwords. Week 6 brought the first major crisis. Thornfield Financial, our second largest client, reported critical errors in contract analysis. Their legal team was threatening to sue for damages over missed clauses that our system should have caught. Owen called an emergency meeting, and for the first time since my demotion, I was included in a room with the full leadership team. Jessica, we need you to look at this, Owen said, his Google confidence notably shaken. The contextual engine is missing obvious risk factors. I reviewed the logs he pushed across the table. It took me less than 30 seconds to identify the issue. You removed the recursive learning functions. The system can't build context without them. Those functions were inefficient, he protested. My team replaced them with standard TensorFlow implementations, which don't account for legal language evolution, I said, keeping my voice professionally neutral. Legal documents don't follow standard language patterns. That's why I built custom functions. Nina cut in. Can you fix it? I met her eyes. Of course, but it means reverting Owen's changes and rebuilding the recursive system. It'll take at least 2 weeks. We don't have 2 weeks, Harrison snapped. Thornfield wants answers by Monday. Then I suggest you get started, I said, standing. Owen has my documentation on the original architecture. I'm sure his team from Google can figure it out. The room erupted as I left. I could hear Nina's voice, sharp with anger, and Owen's defensive protestations. I walked back to my closet office and sent Amelia a single text. They just stepped in it. The weekend was a comedy of errors that I watched unfold via frantic emails and Slack messages. Owen's team worked around the clock trying to understand my code. They brought in consultants. They even tried to hire former members of my team as contractors. But Raj and the others mysteriously had prior commitments. Sunday night. My phone rang. Nina. Jessica, we need you to come in. Tonight. I'm sorry. My advisory hours are Monday through Friday. 9 to 5. It's in my contract. This is an emergency. Thornfield is threatening to pull their entire contract. That's $12 million in annual revenue. That does sound serious, I agreed. I'll be happy to discuss it during my normal hours tomorrow. Jessica, her voice dropped to what she probably thought was a threatening register. If you don't help us fix this tonight, I'll make sure you never work in tech again. I laughed. Actually laughed. Nina, you already tried that with the non-compete. Remember, I'll see you tomorrow at 9. I hung up and poured myself a very nice glass of wine. Amelia called 5 minutes later. Did you just hang up on Nina Voss? She threatened me. I have it recorded. You beautiful genius. Keep playing this exactly as you are. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting. Monday morning arrived with the kind of tension that makes the air feel electric. I arrived at 900 a.m. precisely to find the entire C-suite waiting in my closet office. They looked like they'd been there all night. Owen's Google polish was thoroughly tarnished, his shirt wrinkled, and his eyes bloodshot. "Fix it," Nina said without preamble. "Whatever it takes, fix it." "I'll need full access to the codebase," I said, "and I'll need Owen's team to stop making changes while I work." "Done. And I'll need written acknowledgement that the recursive learning functions are critical to our platform's functionality." Nina's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "For my documentation, I want it clear that my original architecture is what's saving the Thornfield contract." She looked like she'd swallowed a lemon, but she nodded. Harrison pulled out his phone and started typing what I assumed was a carefully worded email. I spent the next 6 hours meticulously rebuilding what Owen had destroyed, but I did something else, too, deep in the code, in functions Owen's team would never think to examine. I inserted logging protocols that would document every single process that relied on my architecture. Every query, every analysis, every cent of revenue would be tracked back to my code. By 3 p.m., the system was functional again. By 4, Thornfield had agreed to a call to see the fixes in action. By 5, they'd agreed to maintain their contract with a few conditions about system stability going forward. I was packing up when Owen appeared in my doorway. "That was impressive," he admitted, his Google pride clearly costing him. "The recursive functions, I didn't understand their importance." "They're based on linguistic evolution patterns I studied at MIT, I said, continuing to pack. "It took me 3 years to perfect the approach." "Could you document that research? It would help me understand better," I smiled. "All my research is proprietary, Owen, but I'm sure someone of your caliber can figure it out. Google scale, right?" His face flushed, but he left without another word. I finished packing and headed home, where Amelia was waiting with Chinese takeout and a bottle of champagne. "Phase 1 complete," she said, raising her glass. "They've admitted in writing that your architecture is critical. They've demonstrated incompetence without you. Now we move to Phase 2, which is, you've been documenting every revenue-generating process that uses your code. Right time to quantify exactly how much money your architecture makes them. When's their Series C pitch?" 6 weeks. They've been preparing the deck. Nina's brought in some consulting firm to make it look pretty. Perfect. We wait until 1 week before, then we drop the hammer. The next 5 weeks passed in a blur of careful documentation and strategic silence. I attended my advisory meetings, answered direct questions, and watched Owen continue to struggle with concepts a second-year CS student would grasp. My former team grew more demoralized by the day. 3 of my best engineers quit, citing cultural differences in their exit interviews. Nina tried to maintain the facade of control, but cracks showed. The Thornfield near-disaster had spooked other clients. 2 smaller companies declined to renew their contracts, citing concerns about platform stability under new leadership. The board was asking questions. Harrison's calls became more frequent and more stressed. I documented it all, every failed optimization, every lost client, every revenue impact that traced back to the destruction of my architecture. Amelia built a damages case that would make a corporate lawyer weep with joy. 1 week before the Series C pitch, everything came to a head. I was in my closet office, ostensibly creating transition documentation, when Nina walked in without knocking. "We need your help with the investor presentation," she said without preamble. "Owen's technical slides aren't compelling." "I'm sure Owen can handle it," I replied, not looking up from my screen. He has extensive experience with investor relations from his time at Google. "Cut the shit. Jessica." Nina's professional mask slipped. "You know he's out of his depth. You know this company needs your architecture to survive. Just help us get through the Series C, and I'll make it worth your while." "Worth my while, how?" "$1 million consulting contract, full remote. You can work on whatever you want, as long as you keep the core platform stable." I finally looked up, and the non-compete remains in place, but with $1 million, you can afford to take 2 years off. I leaned back in my broken chair, studying her, Nina Voss, the turnaround expert, the strategic genius, reduced to begging the woman she'd tried to destroy. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "Send me the proposal in writing." She left, and I immediately called Amelia. "They're desperate," I said. "She just offered me $1 million to save their Series C. Get it in writing, but don't sign anything. We're about to make our move." That evening, Amelia sent a letter to Langmine's board of directors. It was a masterpiece of legal precision. It outlined, in excruciating detail, how the company had violated the terms of my original employment agreement by forcing me into an advisory role without board-approved departure terms. It documented how this violation had